At She Can, we tell women's stories. We show how women got to where they are today. These are very different journeys from many women from all over the world, and I'm really delighted to talk to Dr. Jen Ashby today. Jen, welcome to She Can. You are a leading doctor of East Asian medicine, a holistic health expert, a medical author, and public speaker, sharing your methods for restoring balanced health and influencing disease development and progression. You believe in the whole person, medicine that integrates Eastern and Western approaches, and you consider the entire human experience with the people who come and see you. You have a practice in San Francisco, you do Zoom appointments, and you practice at the UCSF Osher Center for Integrative Health. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Good morning from here on the West Coast. Thank you for the introduction. What a little bit more about myself. I'm also a mother of 3 adult kids. I also am 57 years old and still ride my motorcycle and ride my horses and try to get outside as much as possible. My journey, I'm in my 28th year of my career, and it's been an amazing career. I'm very proud of the medicine that I practice and the accomplishments I've been able to have within the field. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jen. So tell us a bit more about your journey. How did you get to this point where you really are doing things very differently? It shouldn't be such a disruptive thing, but it still is a very disruptive thing when you roll things up differently. And that's what you do. And you've been very successful with it. You've done a great TED Talk on this. Tell us a bit more about that journey.
So the irony is that I got into this field by accident. My little sister didn't know what she wanted to do when she grew up, and I was looking for things because she liked to work with her hands. And we went to an interview at the acupuncture college, and she fell asleep, and I applied to get my master's degree. So it's an interesting journey. I'm really glad I chose to do it in California because in the state of California, we're primary care providers. So we can be somebody's primary care doc, and there's a lot of responsibility. We've got a board that certifies us. And so choosing to do this in the state that I've lived in has offered me opportunities that I might not have had in other states or other countries even. I started, like anyone, hanging my shingle and hoping people would come. It was so long ago already. And they did come. And I learned to rely on a very poetic, beautiful, and effective 4,000-year-old medicine that I fell in love with. And as time went on, opportunities came. Opportunities during the HIV/AIDS crisis came to me with education and conferences in the field of East Asian medicine. I got to embark in, so many different parts of this field: addiction and recovery, programs to reduce recidivism with incarcerated persons who were drug addicted. And each time I got to do something new, I realized that the patterns that I was seeing within all of the education that I needed to give were very similar. So I was a professor in East Asian medicine for a decade in the field of women's health, and eventually, about 10 years ago now, started working at University of California, San Francisco Osher Center of Integrative Health. And once I was there, I was needed in a different way. Oncology was where I was needed, and nephrology, kidney disease. And I just kept noticing the same patterns of education that I would need to give people. So I decided that I needed to learn a way to do it that was representative of most people in a language that people could understand, and in an approach that spoke to people, whether they were just trying to maintain health or whether they had a diagnosis that felt like it was something they could achieve.
Mm.
And I did. Over
Yeah.
time, I learned how to take these exquisite and poetic concepts of East Asian medicine and put them into a Western language without bastardizing the medicine that I learned.
Jen, so you've been speaking about this. You really have become an expert in women's health. What are your takeaways after, being an expert in that for decades?
I think that I got my doctorate in women's health a long time ago. Gosh, 2010, 2012, something like that. And one of the things I've realized is, and sometimes I feel like a one woman army, like speaking on this.
Exactly.
What I've realized is that sometimes we are told we are only valued, valuable, and lovable when we're multitasking and stressed out. And
Mm.
that somehow, if we're not doing that, we're doing it wrong. And it's a lie. And it's making us all sick. And that there's a way of introducing and role modeling for our children and other women that self-care is important and it doesn't lead to egocentrism and narcissism or staring at our own belly buttons too long, but that it's essential, that these ideas of working and being mothers or taking care of a home are kind of relics left over from the Industrial Revolution and times of war when women had to play multiple roles. And and I think industry has kind of cashed in on that and given this language that if we're not doing it all, we're failing. And it's making us sick. I have 21-year-olds with primary ovarian failure. I've got young women with autoimmune diseases in numbers like I've never seen. So I preach that the balance of self-care is important and that reprioritizing oneself in a way where life still feels fulfilling and recognizable, yet you're also not giving away your health to industries that would replace you in a nanosecond. And that reminder that we're important as a person beyond our jobs.
Yeah. Jen, thank you for that. What would you say is your main motivator in all the different fields that you've been active in and now also in oncology, and knowing that 80% of autoimmune diseases is women, and the things that you've been alluding to before, how we sacrifice ourselves on a daily basis to be so perfect for everybody who sort of needs us.
My main motivator is creating a language where and a system where people can approach making that shift from being it all to everybody to not trying to pour from an empty cup
Mm.
in a way that feels achievable. My main motivator is convincing people that self-care is a worthy pursuit. And that if we really want to role model well for our children or our colleagues or people that we're mentoring, that is the place where we must start from, or we're creating future generations that are going to mimic what we do, what we've done in the past, which again is making us sick.
Yeah. Jen, so now that we've been talking about it, I think we need to say, what are these tools that we have as women at our disposal to do that, to make that shift?
So there's 8 things that I focus on, these 8 domains or pillars of health. And I try to tell people that save your money, save your time on specialty things, because if you're not actually focused on these, if you don't have your foundation set, nothing specialized is going to matter, with the exception of Western medical diagnoses and treatment. Those are not, but these are things you can also incorporate if you're on pharmaceuticals or polypharmacy, if you're under the care for some diagnosis. And or even post-operatively, pre-operatively, they apply everywhere. So here are the 8. The first one is Our diet. We can't be healthier than what we eat. It
Mm,
is crazy. And the industrial food complex is actually making us sick. Second is hydration. Just like food, we actually can't be healthier than how hydrated we are. And I mean, as a very, very basic for women, about 2.5 liters a day is essential for organ health, for skin and hair and eyes and menstruation and fertility and all of it. Third is sleep. And it's the one thing that we tend to lack the most, what I lacked last night, because our lifestyles really don't contribute to the notion of sleeping well with the level of stress that most of us live under daily. 7 to 8 hours is essential for most people. Creating really healthy sleep hygiene is essential.
mm,
It's going to be different for many people, and screens don't help. Um, the next one is breath. Most modern humans are really inefficient breathers. And so I teach breath work in a way that helps calm our nervous system, leading into that parasympathetic nurturing. And it's a way to not embody stress and to also a way to retrain our brains with neuroplasticity to reduce anxiety.
mm,
After breath work is exercise and movement, which is absolutely essential. And it doesn't have to mean that you have to drag yourself to the gym after a long day's work, but it is increased cardiovascular movement of 150 minutes a week, which is going to be different for someone who is healthy and looking to get fit to someone who suffers from an autoimmune disorder that makes them extremely tired to someone who's going through chemotherapy treatment. But it applies to everyone, just at different levels. After the next one is actually your bowel movements, which we don't talk. There's 5 things I think we do really wrong in modern culture. One of them is pooping. We all poop, and we need to know how to poop in a healthful way because it's indicative of our gastrointestinal health. And our gut biomes have so much to do with stabilizing our moods and emotions.
mm.
After exercise and bowel movements, there are 2 practices that I incorporate. The first one is the practice of finding joy and awe. And joy and awe, joy, I say, is an inside job. Finding awe is an outside job. Some days when we can't cultivate it on the inside, we can usually find something in the external world that inspires the feeling of awe. And there's a lot of research done on awe and joy and our immune systems, how that enhances both our innate and our acquired immune system. And then the last one, number 8, which is well, I think is the hardest of them all, is not embodying stress, a practice of not embodying it, which is not saying don't be stressed out. It is saying learning the difference between something that should be eliciting a limbic system response of fight, flight, freeze, and learning what isn't. A deadline is not. A
Yeah.
difficult email on a weekend is not. Learning, having a toolbox with which to differentiate and not allowing the stuff that is not to affect us by the releasing adrenaline and cortisol. So those are the 8 ways that I approach self-care. And most of them are things we already do every day. So learning how to fine tune and tailor them to yourself and your own personal constitution is not brain surgery and something that I believe is achievable with everyone. It's not about perfection or absolutism. All efforts count.
Jen, so how do you help the people who come to you to ask you for help, to be their doctor? You do breath work, you do acupuncture. What are the other modalities that you use in order to look at that whole human?
I think that one of the most important things that I do is I sit down and I listen
Mm,
for a long time. And I think that people need to be heard. I think that taking the time out, initially as a stranger and then as a trusted member of their team. It matters and that they look forward to being heard. I also believe that when you let patients talk long enough, they always diagnose themselves. So sometimes what they think they come in for ends up not being what we ultimately end up treating. And
Mm.
treating the whole person means kind of going back in their story, listening to what their life experiences are, talking to them about who they would be and what life would be like if they weren't attached to how they were defining themselves, and working from there. So one of the biggest things I do is I listen and I inquire. And through listening and inquiring, I'm able to lead them often to moments of self-discovery.
Mhm.
And then all the while doing that, talking about how are you eating this week? How did you sleep this week? What may have prevented them from doing those things well, and finding solutions. It's all about being solution oriented and a long-term goal so that all these neuroplastic changes can happen in a way that is effective and meaningful.
Jen, and what top qualities do you have that you feel serve you every day? You're obviously a really good listener. You have perfected that art form as a doctor. What else?
I think for me, I can be a chameleon and show up in a room how people need me to be and still be effective in the same way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Mm.
Jen, so what are you most proud of to date?
I think I'm most proud of how I've been able to represent the field of East Asian medicine to the world, be it through publications or speaking, keynote speaking, or the little TEDx talk, or ways of representing that field that may be helping to legitimize its practice in a Western dominated world. I don't believe that any field or form is better than another. I think we all have our strengths and weaknesses, but I think that my ability to make room for everything and speak on that in a way that creates an equal platform, and finding the language around that can appeal to whomever's listening is what I'm most proud of.
Jen, so give us some top tips for our listeners. There's a lot of men listeners as well. How can you conduct your best life?
Well, I think that first, again, self-care, and I think that a great start is those basic 8 domains or principles, as a means of understanding how to manage life. Within that, my top tip is to pay attention to your own energy on a day-to-day basis, your physical energy. Is it high? Is it low? Do you have dips? So a big tip is if your energy is dipping and you don't have enough for everyday living, and what's required of you, to go back to those 8 domains or pillars and figure out what needs to be adjusted. Another one is lead with your intelligence. Knowledge is power, so always show up prepared. People love having someone that they're listening to or is listening to them that is intelligent and can reflect back in a meaningful way. Um, don't stop until you hear no in a way that makes sense to you, that is logical when you ask questions, and then the no is something that you can accept. Um, yeah, and that self-care is not indulgent.
Yeah. Jen, and so what are your future plans? What's on the horizon for you for the next years?
So at 57, I feel my energy waning. So I'm trying to figure out ways of doing the next 10 years, putting out less physical energy and putting out more intellectual work. One of the things that I'm attempting to do is to take these 8 domains and I'm putting them into a self-paced online course that anybody can take, where they will also have access to me as a clinician in case they need more direction or help, and to be doing more writing. I'm fascinated in the world of East Asian medicine and the neuroplastic changes that happen in the brain. So I'm looking into that a little bit more too. And then there's a couple of other accomplishments I want to get to at UCSF. I'm hoping to create a certification program for advanced care providers to be able that may have not learned within an institutional setting that would like to come and learn.
Mm.
And there's another clinic that I'm hoping to open there in a group style practice for oncology patients to help mitigate the side effects of chemotherapy and radiation on a larger scale of treatment.
It sounds so amazing, Jen. Thank you so much for telling your inspiring story and telling us these incredibly ambitious plans for your future. We wish you all the very best and are so grateful for this conversation today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.